Many fans think the Pittsburgh Steelers are clearing roster space to sign a big-time player in free agency or trade for a wide receiver. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've just surprisingly cut 2 players in the last 2 days. They've cut a wide receiver and they've cut a safety. And the first thing all the fans jump to is, hey, they're clearing a roster space, clearing money for a trade for Brandon Aiyuk or signing Justin Simmons. So let's talk about it. But first, before I get more into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also, like the video. Now let's get right back into it. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have surprisingly released a wide receiver in Denzel Mims. And they've also released safety Trenton Thompson. So let's get into the move of Denzel Mims first, because this was a surprising release for this former second round pick. And when you look at this, he signed a contract in January 17th actually, 2024, for a future and reserve contract. And the team has been trying to get Mims since early July of 2023. They finally got him. But now, on Tuesday, it was reported by Mike Garafolo that the Steelers would be waiving Mims. And he was a project for the Pittsburgh Steelers all offseason. Many people believing in his talents, and maybe he could take that leap with the Steelers and get the fullest potential out of him for being a former second-round pick. But then no, he was ended up being released by the team on Tuesday, and he is an archetype as a receiver who there's been a really hype around him. And the Jets drafted him with hopes of becoming a standout star. Didn't work out. And signed with the Steelers to try to rejuvenate his career. Didn't work out. And now he's released by the team. So you look at this and it was surprising. But at the same time it wasn't. Because when you look at the former wide receivers coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers last season, he was actually with Mims in college. So you could see why maybe many thought that Mims would take that next leap. But since that wide receivers coach left the team and the Pittsburgh Steelers signed a new one, it was going to be a little bit harder for Mims to actually make this roster. If the wide receiver coach from last season stayed on the team, there would have been that connection and the college connection, and maybe he would have advocated for Mims to make the final roster cuts. But since he was gone, it would have been a little bit harder for Mims, and the Steelers finally release him. And now all the hype surrounding him, becoming that standout player in Pittsburgh, is now gone. So, he's now off the team. And also, another surprising cut the Pittsburgh Steelers made was Trenton Thompson. The Pittsburgh Steelers released Trenton Thompson, who filled in nicely for the club, for the team, into the 2023 season when many people got injured. So you look at Trenton Thompson, and he was signed midway through the 2023 season in training camp when the Pittsburgh Steelers were hit by injuries at the safety position, and he impressed during the summer and earn a practice squad spot, displaying ball skills, hit power, and just a solid frame in general at the safety position. And he was someone who was brought up during the season when injuries started fulfilling during the regular season to every single one of their starters, from Minka to Keanu Neal to DeMonte KZ. So you look at all these injuries that happened, and Trenton Thompson had to actually play. And he ended up making one start for the Steelers, and he recorded 22 tackles in 6 games. He also picked off 1 pass. It was a key interception for the first in the team's first game versus the Cincinnati Bengals, which ended up making the Steelers win that game. So you look at Trenton Thompson, he was released by the team. And you look at these 2 cuts, and they were surprising because happening at a time where we're almost getting into training camp, we're almost getting into the preseason, and it's really the offseason right now. So the Steelers still now have 2 open roster spots. So it could be used in different areas. And that's why are the Steelers ready to make a big move with these surprising 2 cuts? And let's take a look at that. Because many fans now, they say, hey, we just released a wide receiver. We're going to trade for Brandon Aiyuk. We just released a safety. We're going to sign Justin Simmons in free agency. But I'm here to say that these moves don't mean anything. Because when you think about it, these moves could have been made at any time. If anything, if a move were to be made, it would have been made when the Pittsburgh Steelers decided to restructure the contract of Alex Highsmith months ago to clear that, $8 million, whatever it was in cap space. To clear all that money, the move would have been made then. If anything, it made more sense then too, because it would have been earlier in the offseason. It could still happen, but these moves have nothing to do with it, because it saves very, very little money, because both these players are probably making the minimum, probably making nothing towards the cap. So clearing these contracts, waiving them, probably has no impact on the cap at all, in terms of maybe $800,000 each player towards the cap at max. So you look at this, and these moves don't mean anything. In terms of roster space, the Steelers could have cut any player on the brink of making the team of the roster if a trade were to go down, if a signing were to go down. They wouldn't have to release these players days in advance if they knew a move was about to be made. And when you look at this, that's the reason why I think that these moves, it really has no impact on if the Pittsburgh Steelers would trade for Brandon Aiyuk or sign Justin Simmons. And that's just my perspective of it. The Steelers, they would have to pay Brandon Aiyuk $30+ million. That's what he wants. And also, they would have to waste either a second round, first round, or a combination of draft picks to be able to land Brandon Aiyuk. So it would be a big asking price and a big loan or a giveaway of assets, future assets that the Pittsburgh Steelers wouldn't have down the road. And Justin Simmons, on the other hand, that could still happen. That has a better chance, better possibility of happening, I believe, just because he's still a free agent. He's a safety. The Pittsburgh Steelers, yes, they have Minka. Yes, they have DeMonte KZ. Yes, they have Deshaun Elliott. But you could always bring in another safety, and Justin Simmons has always been a person who's linked to the Pittsburgh Steelers in the past. So if the money works out, that could still happen. But in terms of these moves having an impact on other moves being made, no, it doesn't have any impact from my standpoint, my perspective on all of this. Now, just one last thing before I end this video. I just want to give my perspective on the Brandon Aiyuk thing, the Brandon Aiyuk trade that's been talked about for months now, since the end of last season. Brandon Aiyuk has obviously said that the team doesn't want him anymore. They don't want to listen to his contract offers. They're not on the same page. The general manager comes out and says they want to sign him. They want him back on the team. But just like this week, Brandon Aiyuk said that the team basically said they don't want him anymore. So it's kind of a narrative from both sides. But my perspective on this is, hey, if the Steelers were trying to trade for Brandon Aiyuk, me personally, I really wouldn't want him on the team in terms of, hey, you would have to give up a lot to get him. He's a great player, don't get me wrong. I would love to have him on the team based off his skills and everything like that. But in terms of what the Steelers would have to give up, they would have to probably give up a first-round draft pick. And if not a first, a second and third. And on top of that, paying him $30 million, that's a lot of money for a receiver who is a number 1, number 2, number 3 receiver with the 49ers. Last season, he made the jump as the number 1, but all throughout his tenure, he was like the number 2, number 3 option behind Deebo and George Kittle. So would you really want to pay someone that much money, give up that much assets, when the Steelers have always been great at drafting receivers in the draft, in the second round, third round, first round, whatever? And that's the draft picks that you'd be giving up. You could draft a receiver in the first round. Yes, you wouldn't have to pay him $30 million as well. So you could also use those other draft picks to trade for different players. It doesn't have to specifically be a wide receiver. The Pittsburgh Steelers, yes, we need a receiver. George Pickens is really the only clear-cut person on this team right now. But in my mind, if you have to give up all that and also pay that money, it just doesn't make sense. Down the road, in 1 year, 2 years, you have to pay George Pickens as well. And you can't pay two wide receivers specifically, $30+ million. And that's what George Pickens might end up making down the road. So it doesn't make sense. But Justin Simmons' situation, I would want him on the team. I've always been a fan of Justin Simmons. He's someone who I believe could help Minka Fitzpatrick get back to playing Minka ball, in which we heard the defense coordinator and Minka say himself. So Justin Simmons, on the other hand, I would want that to happen. If the money's right, sure, why not get that done? But anyway, that's the end of this video. Just giving my perspective on this topic. And also let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on this as well. Do you think these moves, these release and surprising cuts by Denzel, Mims, and Trenton Thompson have anything to do with the Pittsburgh Steelers' plans to trade for a player and make a big time move there, or sign a big time free agent to replace those spots? Or do you believe, like I believe, it's just that the Steelers are making moves and this has nothing to do with anything going on in terms of that? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And also, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. We're getting into training camp soon. I'm going to cover all the highlights and analysis going on there, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. But until next time, I'm out. Peace.